Hello and welcome to Channel 51 News for Thursday, August the 7th. Now, this is independent news, unlike anything that you will get out there, I believe, in Australia and possibly anywhere in the world. The purpose of this show is to present to you information, facts, and the stories of the day, and to provide a narrative that weaves that you can see in real time that will open up pathways towards discussion and common ground for those issues and areas where our lives are being turned upside down, and the governments of the day that insist that they must hold all the power are not living up to expectations and are letting us down. So this is independent news, and it is now syndicated on WRMI radio and also on the Cafe Locked-Out network here in Australia. But you can watch direct as you are right now on X. You can also see on YouTube and Facebook. And of course, all of my work is found at channel51.com.au or jasonqcitizen.substack.com. And I appreciate your support, whether you choose to subscribe for free or you can become a paid subscriber as well and help to make me and maintain me as a professional, and also get access to some incredible, great interviews and work going on. And I've just announced at channel51.com.au today a Clinton crime series with a series of interviews with people in different fields in the lead up to the Clintons facing the House Oversight Committee in October, on the 9th for Hillary and on the 14th for Bill Clinton. So it will be quite timely as well. Well, what I'd like to do right now is to get into the news of the day. And we've learnt that Queensland school teachers have walked out for the first time since 2009. They go on strike as a young teacher has detailed some horrific stories about what she's had to endure. I'll give you the headline right now. This is what we've seen on Murdoch Press. Gold Coast teenager beaten, sexually harassed by primary school students. It's quite shocking indeed. But let's cut now to the clip, and we'll hear now for what has been telegraphed as the strike, the first in 16 years.
Queensland teachers will walk off the job today for the first time in 16 years. 50,000 teachers are expected to strike, which will impact all state schools and more than 500,000 students. Members voted for industrial action after the Queensland Teachers Union rejected an 8% pay rise over 3 years. The union says the state government needs to do more to address teacher shortages and boost workplace safety.
Suitable conditions in order to ensure that they're giving the best possible learning outcomes to our children, essentially.
I think it's quite important. Their job is quite hard.
I'm going to keep them at home.
Oh, I have to send them to school tomorrow.
I'm working from home, so it's just a distraction for them to be at home.
Parents have been asked not to send their children to school, but there will be staff to supervise if they are unable to keep them at home.
So you got an interesting perspective there from 4 or 5 different parents, each explaining how the teachers' strike might affect those. And so the First Lady, the idealist, was talking about how it would best affect outcome and learning outcomes for children. Now, that's fine in a perfect world, but school is far from perfect, and all of us have been through the system to realise that many of us didn't want to go. Others were able to survive and cope through the system and thrive, and many get lost in the system as well. So it's one thing to stand all high and mighty and say, well, let's get the teachers getting the best results for our kids. But what happens when our children behave appallingly? And is it isolated? Or is it something that the bad apple affects the entire bunch? And are parents meant to be held responsible? And is the system letting us down by not being able to handle properly kids that are bad eggs and are behaving appallingly? So we've learnt about a young school teacher, Chelsea Rose, who is based on the Gold Coast. And she's detailed just how far from what some perceive to be the easiest job on earth, that teaching really can be quite difficult. We'll play this video clip now and you'll get a taste for what Chelsea Rose has to deal with. Take a look.
Today, since Richard and a few other people think I have the easiest job on earth, I'm going to tell you about my most tricky day as a teacher. Then if you guys still think it's the easiest job on earth, so be it. Trigger warning, this story is going to talk about physical violence that results in broken bones and an unalive animal. Day started like most days, where a specific child would come into the room every day with their metal drink bottle and a ruler. I don't have a ruler, so we're going to pretend, and they would bash it and make the loudest noise. They decided to put their drink bottle down there, start shaking it, making, kind of motion. They then opened the lid, let the water spray everywhere, and said, "I just all over you." After that, they then left the classroom with a bunch of other children, and I had to call the office because I don't know where they went. A little while later, they did return with an unalive bird. Now, I don't know if they unalived the bird or they found the bird unalive. However, they came back with an unalive bird and they began to throw it at me and the other children in my class, and then around the room to each other. And if you thought that was traumatizing enough, I'm not even at the most traumatizing part of the story yet. A little while later, I was on non-contact, and after my traumatizing morning, I was literally just in a little room next to my classroom, marking assessment, trying to chill myself out. Then had a child come into the little room and say, "You need to get me this toy." I replied with, "Well, we need to ask the teacher because I'm not your teacher right now." They had like science or something, I can't even remember. And this kid looked at me and said, "If you don't get me this toy, I'm about to get angry at you." So I stood up and went into the classroom to ask the teacher if this child could have this specific toy. Got up, I closed the door behind me, and I'm kind of stuck like beside a fridge, beside a desk, and a door's closed behind me. The child was in front of me, and as we walk out, he's around and starts basically laying into me. I was getting punched in the face, in the chest, in the stomach, literally everywhere. Because of restrictive practices, I could not defend myself, obviously. I just had to stand there and cop it. The child hit me so hard and that many times that they ended up actually breaking one of my ribs. The child was suspended for 20 days and then they were back in my classroom after that for the rest of the year. But anyway, Richard, that's just one of my days as a teacher. That, granted, probably was the worst one. I'm a little traumatized by it still. Let me know. I would love to know if people agree with Richard, and if I'm just a bit delulu and it really is the easiest job in the world.
Just take a breath there for a moment and just consider what that young lady has to go through. Now, I don't know about you, but if this was in any other part of the world and you were dealing with adults, people would be screaming for the rooftops and there would be all forms of charges being laid, etc., and people being held to account. Now, many of us have problems with authority. There's no question about that. But this is far from that. We are dealing with a primary school teacher, clearly an attractive young lady, and maybe that is the reason that there is some sort of behaviour like that's going on like this. And it's not a justification, of course, but the fact is that we are dealing with primary school teachers, and some of those learned behaviours, the act with the bottle, of the shaking of the bottle, is quite unacceptable. And it points also to something that's a little bit more disgraceful underneath it, that we're talking firstly about this YouTube ban. But there's no ban on R-rated material, X-rated material, and the access to that when kids are obviously getting access to it. And whether they're going directly and whether they're seeing it on phones, whether it's being shared on phones. But this is, again, something that kids in one-upmanship will be doing this to sort of outshow that they can all in a hurry to grow up faster. And, of course, this is a consequence that we see, and it's quite devastating nonetheless. But what we've got to now look at here is a chart that's been published today. The relationship between the year of perpetrator and the type of sexual harassment. I apologise for the small numbers there that you can see on screen, but we are talking of reports of harassment type from children as young as kindy to year 3, through years 4 to 6, 7 to 8, 9 to 10, and 11 to 12. And it seems in the period 9 to 10, these age groups sort of between 14 and 16, where you're getting a huge increase or spike. But nevertheless, it is still happening in years 7 and 8, and then it dies off a little bit as you get to years 11 and 12. But sexually suggestive gestures for children in 9 to 10, over 100 reports. Sexual propositions to a teacher, sexual name calling, sexual groaning noises made at the teacher, sexual behaviours, rape jokes, rape threats, groping. I mean, I don't mean to get alarmist, but we've all been to school, and for those of us that have been through, I'm for one that went to a boys' school, for goodness sake. Now, the boys weren't angels, but I cannot ever remember a report or seeing in a situation a boy saying something like that to a school teacher. And if they did, they would have been taken out by their ear and dealt with in the old school manner. Now, of course, we've moved way past that, but this is not the point. It's the fact that we are on a slippery slope and we don't know what to do about it. It is a devastating story and it needs to be addressed. And of course, on the other side, we're also learning of children, underage gambling in schools. And there are different reasons for that. And we'll address that a little bit later, subject to time, or hand that over to tomorrow. Now, meantime, Meta, which is the parent of Facebook and Instagram and others, including WhatsApp. Well, The Guardian's written up this story. No clear explanation. Businesses reliant on Meta struggle after wrongful suspensions. Now, Josh Taylor writes, bans aren't new, but since July, many Meta users have reported accounts being suspended erroneously for breaching community standards. Now, in that yellow ring there, I'll just read this off. This is according to what happened to makeup artist Sam Enticknap. I received a horrible email saying a reference to child sexual exploitation content, which obviously was quite traumatic to see, she said. Saying my Instagram accounts have been disabled was just no clear explanation. Well, this story is not isolated as covered in this particular Guardian article. The exact same thing happened to me last year in around November, where I was flagged where Meta, through either its AI or through somebody who wanted to take my account out, flagged the exact same thing. Now, of course, it didn't happen, and many who know me know that I am one of the biggest supporters of how we can protect children against child abuse, and have interviewed countless people on the subject. And as a matter of fact, we'll be interviewing one of the world's most known victims, Kathy O'Brien, in an upcoming edition in the second half of August on this and other issues, because she was one that was involved with MK Ultra and was a victim of that, and very, very high profile case, and you can check out her books. Now, so it's abhorrent to think that this would be a charge leveled at me. Now, there was no evidence, none. There was no right of appeal. There was no due process. There was simply an allegation that we don't even know was made by AI or was made by an individual. For the plot to thicken, in this case, I'd also been trying to advertise on Facebook for political ads sometime when I ran for two different parties, and I was unable to spend the money. But ironically, my credit card was still linked, and one day I found that I'd had $600 and something worth of charges against it. Doing some deep level research into how this could have happened, I found that this specific person or user that was able to access the card and make the ads for a restaurant in Vietnam, and it was tracked back to Facebook staffers, two of them. I reported it to the police, and the bank immediately was able to give me my money back, but that wasn't the point. Facebook never answered for the charges, and they don't. So the Guardian's article is very timely, but it is just the beginning. If anyone else is out there that's been taken down for charges that they're not aware of, please let me know either in the comments or send me an email, jasonqcitizen@gmail.com, and we'll look into it and be able to compile some important information as we become the news now, the independent news moving through. Now, meantime, also in mainstream news, this is from late last month. The aggressive mandate of COVID vaccines reported by the Daily Mail was probably a bad idea, as a new study reveals WHO-endorsed blanket vaccinations saved fewer lives than expected. Well, colour me pink. And the YouTube, well, they're going to go into a tailspin, because you can't say anything that goes against the WHO. But here we are, the Daily Mail's doing it. The aggressive mandate of COVID jabs has been blasted as a bad idea by experts after a new study revealed it saved less lives than predicted. And of course, what did Australia do? Well, we just signed up to the WHO pandemic treaty through not doing anything. Meanwhile, they claimed that 14.4 million deaths just in the first year prevented, estimating up to 20 million lives saved. Well, the Stanford University and Italian doctors revealed the true number is closer to 2.5 million. That means it's an 800% over inflation of success based on absolute nonsense. When are we going to be able to hold these people to account? But this is exactly what we are trying to do here in the news. It is meant to provide you with information and then provide you with ways and solutions to come down the centre as we're able to bring more and more people to see this. It's only early days, but this is what this project is all about. Meanwhile, Paul Griffin was on Channel 9's Today Show this morning, and he was telling us that 120,000 people have got RSV, and therefore more vaccines are needed. Now, Sarah Arbo, who was interviewing him, said, good advice. In other words, I can't challenge you, I won't challenge you, just good advice. And that there lies the problems. These so-called therapeutics that are being sold as a solution that are failing are not and must be criticised and must be held to account. So good on the Daily Mail there for doing it. Meanwhile, here's another crazy story. Lyme disease, something that's not recognised in this country. Well, according to People magazine, Justin Timberlake, Bella Hadid, Riley Keough, Debbie Gibson, Justin Bieber, and more people coming out saying that they have got Lyme disease. Now, again, not recognised in Australia, but is it related to something that we're not meant to understand or know about? Is it related to perhaps chemicals or something else out there? And whether these celebrities are going to play victim or whether they're going to find out, very interesting times indeed. Now, let's fast forward and move over to the United States, where Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, has just had a highly productive meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, with great progress made, reports Donald Trump. Afterwards, I updated some of our European allies. Everyone agrees this war must come to a close, and we will work towards that in the days and weeks to come. Thank you for your attention in this matter. Well, what we'll do is we'll go now to a report from Peter Ducey on Fox News.
President Trump reportedly set to meet face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin as early as next week. This comes right off of Steve Witkoff's meeting with Putin. Senior White House correspondent Peter Ducey fills us in on this huge development. Hi, Peter.
And Martha, I see the Chiron, we're citing a report. We can confirm that report. I was just in the West Wing, and I'm told that this is what happened. Earlier today in Moscow, Steve Witkoff was told by Vladimir Putin that Putin wants to meet at some point with Trump. Witkoff then relayed that message to the president, who is open to it, the possibility of a meeting as soon as next week, if the result of that meeting will be an end to the war in Ukraine. We know that President Trump was on a phone call with Volodymyr Zelensky and some European leaders. He shared this with all of them. We don't know exactly where in the world it would be. It could be anywhere. Could be at the White House. Could be in a neutral country like Qatar or Switzerland or something, the people that normally host things like this. And I have a statement from Caroline Leavitt, hot off the presses. Haven't seen this anywhere. It says, as President Trump said earlier today on Truth Social, great progress was made during Special Envoy Witkoff's meeting with President Putin. The Russians expressed their desire to meet with President Trump, and the president is open to meeting with both President Putin and President Zelensky. President Trump wants this brutal war to end. And so the emphasis there is on the Russians making this request, but President Trump obviously being open enough to it that there could be a global summit between Putin, Trump, and Zelensky as soon as next week. But there's also a possibility that it slides, and there's also a possibility that it never happened.
There's also a possibility that it does, and therein lies the point. But the timing is exquisite when you consider that we are now looking at Epstein stories, Russiagate charges, Russia-Ukraine being resolved, and of course Israel-Gaza right at the tip and connected now to Epstein. I'm going to show you how that works in just a moment. All things are coming to a head at the same time as the US is making massive inroads economically to set people on a path to success rather than failure. For the first time, the trajectory is upwards coming out of the US compared to everywhere else, where it seems to get harder and harder. And we know that when our kids are worse off than we are. Well, this is an interesting story that's popped up out of the Times of Israel. And it was written by a fellow called Yosef Janoski. And the story, it is a blog, but it is published within the Times of Israel. Trump, Israel, and the Epstein files. So let's just have a look at this, right? So page 1, it says here, Trump and his administration criticized Netanyahu and Israel. Now the Epstein files are haunting him. For a long time, the files had subsided into the background. They weren't considered to be much of a threat to Trump, but all of a sudden, right after he started up with Israel, the files surfaced and they seemed to be overwhelming him. Trump blasted Bibi after shrapnel hit a church in Gaza. The church is in a war zone. It was not targeted, rather shrapnel from a nearby explosion hit. All right then. Well, that's the wrong one. I'll go back to this one. Trump decided to bomb Iran's nuclear sites, and that's commendable, he argues. But reports later surfaced that he rejected the option to bomb for a week's time in order to finish off all the sites. Thus, only Fort Howe was severely damaged, while other sites had only minimal or no damage. And now some old files are threatening him. Perhaps Trump will realise that it really doesn't pay to start up with Israel. Perhaps those implicated in the files will express contrition and regret. Okay. Does that sound like a threat to you? Does it sound like intimidation? And therefore, does it sound like that Donald Trump is not under the thumb of Israel? Does it also sound like to you that maybe Israel has some of the incriminating evidence or access to the files? Why would they sound so cocky, and why would they wheel out an old man to write a blog in the Times of Israel? So let's now have a look here. Because when, by divine providence, things that were hidden become revealed, it enables people to correct their mistakes and to endeavour to live their lives properly the way God wants them to. And everyone sees that the world is not a jungle and that God Almighty runs the world with compassion, giving humanity the ability to fix what's wrong, so what we can have is peace with true ethics, as God told Moses at Mount Sinai to tell all nations to adhere to the 7 Noahide laws, a peaceful world which will all be filled with the awareness of God just as the waters cover the sea. May it happen very soon. When I read that, I start to read between the lines and wonder if this is a smokescreen, a diversion, an accusation, or a great plot twist. But it does sound like Israel is, well, backpedaling a little bit when Donald Trump is not doing exactly what he was expected to do. Meanwhile, Trump, as we've seen with the protests in Gaza in Sydney at the weekend, will not side with Hamas and reward terrorism. Saving Israel for last? Certainly seems so. It's a big, big story. Meanwhile, if we're going to talk a little bit more about access to Trump and what's really going on, Dan Scavino, Deputy White House Chief of Staff, has posted some interesting posts today. He writes, imagine being a current senator or former member of Congress and begging the Biden auto pen administration for a pardon and getting it. Then he writes, what did the US Secret Service have to tell Joe Biden regarding Hunter? The American people deserve to know. Wow, there's some interesting stories. And here's another one that's interesting. According to Nick Sautor, former special counsel Robert Mueller, who was subpoenaed yesterday, has been discovered in a memory care home, per RCI's Paul Sperry. How about that? Of course, he's in dementia care now. Dems use dementia-ridden fools as their puppets. We saw Mueller's dementia years ago when he was lost and doddering through the Russian collusion hoax testimony. What a joke. Quite extraordinary. Well, let me show you another joke. This is Melbourne Lord Mayor Nicholas Rees. Check this story out. Melbourne Lord Mayor Nicholas Rees has proposed adopting a First Nations calendar with 6 seasons rather than the traditional 4, including wet summer and wet winter to reflect the Wurundjeri people. Redefining seasons is his top priority in a city grappling with crime, homelessness, the cost of living crisis. Well, I've got something to tell you, Nick. You come from Melbourne. You don't have 6 seasons in a year. You have 4 in a day. And if core has got anything to do with it, is it true that Australia experiences 4 seasons in a day? Well, Philip Dandy, former medical person, he writes, if you live in Melbourne, Victoria, there's every chance in the world that 4 weather seasons can be experienced in one day. It all depends on what the weather patterns are for the 24-hour period. Well, there you go. That's telling you. And that's the scientific response there. Well, thank you also for people who have sent in their suggestions. Zolly writes, thanks, Jason. I'd like to hear more about the renewables scam and how the wind farms are taking up valuable farming land. What are the farmers saying about it? And is there any backlash from the country areas? Well, we will reach out to experts in the area. I've got one person in mind in terms of green energy as well and other areas. So we'll continue to do that. Now, some of them will be short reports used in the news and others will be long-form interviews. And that's why I encourage everyone to join up and subscribe to channel51.com.au. You can do so freely and get access to almost all of the content. or then there's the more exclusive stuff that is part of being part to get access to as paid. And of course, you are supporting independent media, which is myself along the way. This is currently a one-man show. I do all the work myself, but we will be adding more people who will be in front of the camera and hopefully behind of the camera as well as we expand. And we are being syndicated now through WRMI Radio, which is 9955 kilohertz. That's shortwave radio out of Florida, and also on the Cafe Locked Out network. This bulletin will air for the evening for those people that can't catch it during the day. Now, I also want to bring your attention now. This is to very interesting story coming out in relation to the Clintons, and they're expected to be, well, they have been subpoenaed to go before the House Oversight Committee in relation to Epstein. But there's a little bit more to the story.
Subpoenas that went out, those are set to make their way into D.C. Towards the end of August, perhaps even September. But I've also heard, hey, even though we got these subpoenas and we're going to bring them in for questioning, getting indictments is one thing, getting a conviction on some things are another. And if you turn your attention to all of the Epstein information with Bill and Hillary Clinton coming in here as well, there's a lot to uncover there. It's a lot to unpack with this investigation. I've got some sources, some independent journalists that have really put a lot of time in this. Look out for money laundering charges and the interest going towards Hillary and Bill Clinton.
Woo! That's some juicy stuff right there. Well, Brian Glenn, thank you as always, my good friend. Good to see you. And we'll be right back with more Human Events in just 2 short minutes.
How about that, hey? Money laundering. Well, we have spoken, or at least I've spoken to Charles Ortel, the world's leading expert on the Clinton Foundation, and I have made inquiries to get Charles back again, but we've already got an interview in the can from a few months back that covers on the topic, so we'll see if we can get an update. If not, we'll re-release that one for you. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, she is the one that has brought all this together and could well be the catalyst to how the world changes. She was interviewed by Miranda Devine recently, and she was asked the big question. So this is the counter to what might be the fake version. Let's see what she says about the real version of off-planet intelligence.
So, I mean, is there anything, we've had some declassification of some very strange videos that look like they are, unidentified flying objects. Is there anything in the files that you think you could find or you have found?
Nothing that I'm prepared to talk about today.
So watch this space.
Say what?
Watch this space.
We are I'm just going to say this. We're continuing to look for the truth and share that truth with the American people.
The truth is out there.
Yes, it is.
So do you believe that there could be aliens?
I honestly, like, my personal belief. I have my own views and opinions.
Right.
In this role, I got to be careful with what I share.
Very interesting.
Wow. It is the biggest secret in human history to allow us to know that there is other intelligence that could be more advanced than us. And if there was, how would human beings be able to cope in a hierarchy, or would we be insulated or protected? Would there be rules, for example, if there was more advanced intelligence than us, how we were meant to interact in order to protect us so that we wouldn't be exploited? It seems to be this is why it's so delicate. Could it be that there's less advanced intelligence than us that's out there? We don't seem to ever address that concept. And of course, the big question is, well, why haven't they come here? Well, maybe they have, and maybe there are rules in place. So I'll tell you what, Tulsi was dancing there. I find it fascinating by what we'd say. Now, we are at the end of the bulletin, and I just wanted to make a quick reference. I just happened to pick up the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and just magically opened up to page 115. And it's just in relation to what we're hearing about the kids today and the gambling that's going on with young children. And Kiyosaki writes, it's not how much you make, but how much you keep and how many generations you keep it. So when people ask Robert where to start getting rich, he gives them the same answer his rich dad gave him. If you want to be rich, you need to be financially literate. Robert compares the way many people act to building a skyscraper on a slab made for a small home. Because kids graduate school with little financial education, they launch into their adult lives chasing the American dream but find themselves deep in debt. The only way out they can see is a get-rich-quick strategy, which obviously means gambling. But without having that financial literacy background, their efforts are like building a skyscraper on a weak foundation, and instead of creating the Empire State Building, they end up with the Leaning Tower of suburbia. So I find that really interesting, that the idea is to buy assets and not liabilities. Therefore, when you go out there and it becomes too difficult and you throw some money away on a holiday or whatever, just realize that an asset, of course, a depreciating asset is a car, but you need an appreciating asset. It's not necessarily that you have to buy a house or you have to buy something expensive. And just for argument's sake, I thought, what would I tell my kids if they asked me that today? And I thought I'd share it with you. This is just a chart from the local bullion dealer here in Sydney. And I'll just give you an example there. For as little as $66, you can purchase a silver coin, for example. Now, that's an asset. It's made out of silver, and the price always goes up, and it's a hedge against inflation. And that gives you a chart there from $66 up to $9,900. That's not all of what they do. I'm not advertising for this particular company. I'm simply saying that you can buy an asset at prices that are not very much. And if your kids are not sure, and if they're out gambling, maybe what they can do is, if they've got a part-time job, is once a month put away and purchase a coin or two and use that as a starting point to at least hedge against inflation. Well, thanks for watching Channel 51 News. I look forward to bringing you the Friday edition, and obviously lots of new interviews ahead of us as we continue to navigate our way through and out of the quagmire that threatens to hold back the human species, and instead we aim for abundance, solutions, and a better world for us and our children and their children, which is what we always were meant to do, and not be taken out by bad actors in big, powerful roles working against the species. Thanks for watching. See you all tomorrow.